cross-border terror? Is it still a major threat? Are tourists in particular soft targets for terror? And is this Islamist terror which is rearing its head by targeting Hindu tourists? Lieutenant General D.S. Hooda, former General Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Indian Army's Northern Command with me. Professor Amitabh Mattu, Professor at the School of International Studies, JNU, one of the foremost scholars on Jammu and Kashmir. Manoj Joshi, Distinguished Fellow at the ORF and a writer on books on Kashmir, joins us. Appreciate your joining us. General Hooda, your first reactions. Could this be preventable, or is it clearly something that beyond the point the army could not have done much about, given the nature of this area? General Hooda. Yeah, you're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So Rajdeep, we obviously want every incident to be preventable, and which is why the army, the CAPFs and the police are deployed in such large numbers, out on the streets, out on the border. Unfortunately, the fact is that every incident cannot be prevented. This is absolutely horrific. I remember. So let me just say, I remember the attack on Uri Garrison, and I kept thinking, could it have been prevented? Unfortunately, it wasn't possible. I think what we have to do is sort of look ahead and see, now that this has happened, what are the lessons that we need to learn? And clearly, Rajdeep, having seen what is happening in the last 1 year, Pakistan is stepping up. They've stepped up infiltration in Jammu region. We've had spate of incidents there. We are now seeing this incident in Kashmir, clearly trying to convey a narrative that what the government has been talking about, that there is normalcy, everything is fine, so many tourists are coming up, is meant to counter that narrative. So these are some things that we'll have to deal with, see what we have to do now. Let me tell you, Rajdeep, the government is going to be under enormous pressure, the manner in which it is being done. What are the options that we need to do to deal with this is something that they will be debating over the next few days.
I'll come to those options in a moment, but I want to just focus on what's happened today for now. Professor Mattu, has what has happened surprised you? Or is it always that in Kashmir we've seen so many false dawns? Just when we think normalcy is returning, terrorists strike. And this strike comes at a time when the tourist season is taking off, when the Vice President of the United States is in India, at a time soon after when Pakistan's vulnerabilities were exposed in Balochistan. How do you view this? Is this Pakistan once again trying to incite, foment trouble in the valley?
Rajdeep, I'm not just surprised or shocked, I'm deeply traumatized. The heart-wrenching images that you have broadcast on your television channels, it can move anyone, even the hardest of souls. It's a terrible tragedy. It is a terrible tragedy where citizens of India, across India, have been impacted. There's no doubt, there are no pug marks, just pug marks. Short of a smoking gun, this is Pakistan. And unless you stop Pakistan, this is going to happen. Clearly, there is an intelligence failure. This is Baisaran, which is really a meadow next to Pahalgam town itself. It's a trekkers stop to Tulin Lake and other places in the Lido Valley. But the fact that if you had heard General Asif Munir speak in his obnoxious speech to the diaspora of Pakistanis, you would have realized that this is a country which has still not come to terms with what it means to be a modern nation. His obnoxious narrative suggested that the Pakistani army was going to do something irrational. And they've done this at a time when you have the Vice President of the United States visit here, when the Kashmir tourist season was nearing its peak. No Kashmiri has any appetite for violence. And no Kashmiri really would condone what's happened today. Lashkar-e-Taiba, TRF, these are just names. This is the handwork of the Pakistani army and the ISI. I, who is generally considered a moderate, would say we need a response. We need a hard response, not just another discussion, not just another committee like the Subramaniam Committee after the Kargil War, but something more to demonstrate to Pakistan that we will not take these costs lying down again.
Are you saying, Professor Mattu, that General Asim Munir, and we are playing extracts of his speech where he said that, justified the two-nation theory. Do you believe that what has happened today, therefore, is linked to many of those remarks that General Munir has made? That we are going back in a way to what we saw with General Musharraf more than 2 decades ago, a strident general who wants to restore the army's primacy in a way and his own, in a sense, dominance over the political system. That this is not a Lashkar operation only, this is a Pakistan army operation.
He sounded like an Islamic zealot. Musharraf, for all his ills and sins, was aggressive, adventurous, a commando, but he was not like Asim Munir. When I heard Asim Munir, I said, if this reflects the state of Pakistan today, not only is South Asia in danger, forget Pakistan itself. It's really in deep internal turmoil. It's imploding, whether it's in Baluchistan or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Forget Pakistan. But Pakistan today is a danger for the whole region, frankly speaking. And it's liberals and other people who produce books which suggest that time is now ripe for a dialogue with Pakistan who need to introspect. And frankly speaking, it is a failure which intelligence agencies in the army needs to examine as well. The security visual has been compromised at some point. Pahalgam is the gateway to the Amarnath shrine as well. So you would have imagined that you would have had a presence, that you have had to have electronic intelligence being intercepted and human intelligence also there. Of course, you can't prevent every incident, but this incident suggests that the calm over the last 2 years may have been a deceptive calm, that you might see other incidents like this if Pakistan is allowed to get away with what it's done today.
Manoj Joshi, do you go along with that, that we are seeing in this particular incident a possible resurgence of the kind of terror that took place 2 decades ago when Pakistan was using Kashmir in a way to deflect attention from its own internal domestic issues and to, in a way, try and push India to the dialogue table? That when you come, do you really believe that Pakistan now is back to being what we fear it's always been, a rogue nation, that from time to time will use groups like Lashkar to send a reminder to India that cross-border terrorism is still a threat?
Rajdeep, Pakistan has not changed. If you're looking at this massacre today, but in 2019, there was a massacre. In 2017, there was a massacre of civilians. 2019, there was a massacre. 2006, there was a massive massacre in Doda. So Pakistan has not changed. There is no shift out there. There was an attempt during the generalship of General Bajwa to try to strike a back-channel deal with India. There has been a ceasefire along the line of control, which has reduced the level of militancy in the valley, reduced the level of militants coming into the valley. All that has happened, but we have also had consistent action all through the last couple of years. Pakistani nationals have been operating in India. Last year, that we were talking about, the Poonch Rajouri area. After Umar Abdullah came to power, there was something like 10 terrorism incidents in the valley in a span of 17 days. So there was a sense of messaging from Pakistan.
Yeah, but the messaging was largely, Manoj, if I may just intervene, was largely in the Jammu area. Now they've struck in the heart of the valley once again. There was a belief that they had moved their locus to the Jammu area. Now they've come and struck in the heart of the tourist bastion of Pahalgam.
Rajdeep, that's exactly what I told you, that as soon as Omar became Chief Minister again in October 2024, the valley saw 10 terrorism incidents in a span of 17 days. So there was a shift to the valley last October. And as far as Pahalgam is concerned, don't forget that in 1993, this was the place where 6 or 7 foreigners were kidnapped. And they've never been heard of again. the Pahalgam Valley was the place where the terrorists kidnapped these people. Terrorists belonging to the Jaish-e-Mohammed now kidnapped these people.
That's right. That time they, of course, called themselves by different groups like Al-Farhan. That time they were also seen as foreign terrorists operating in the valley. So it almost seems as if we are turning the clock back. But just to go back to the General Huda, you know, in an area like this, as Amitabh was explaining, you've got the Betab Valley there. Lots of people come there, flock there. The meadows are lovely, green, lush. This is spring. People having lunches, the tourists from all over India coming. Is it not possible to secure these zones, or do you believe it's impossible beyond the point to secure every inch of land in the Kashmir Valley?
Rajdeep, beyond a point, it's impossible to secure every inch. Practically, I'm saying this. What also happens, and I'm sure you have reported about it, very large presence of security forces in tourist areas. And then there are complaints. There is overwhelming presence of security forces. It's sort of stifling us. So, I mean, there is always a balance to be maintained. And every time an incident happens, as I said, we wish it could have been preventable. And this valley is huge. I mean, there are large number of picnic spots and everything. Mm-hmm. And if everywhere you have people in uniform, I mean, it's reported. People are saying it looks stifling that we have so much presence of security forces. So whenever an incident happens, I'm sure questions like this will be asked, and they should be analyzed as to whether it could have been prevented. But to think that you can have boots on the ground everywhere, I think, honestly, is not possible.
You know, Amitabh Bhattu, there was a sense, particularly when the Omar Abdullah government took over in October, it would be the first step to another major step towards restoration of normalcy. Presumably, normalcy cannot be restored as long as you have a rogue nation across the border sending in terrorists. So the limitations, in a way, seem to have got cruelly exposed by what this terrible, tragic incident today.
Yeah, the limitations of normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir will always be defined by the state of Pakistan. Pakistan today is in deep turmoil, and as long as it is in deep turmoil, it will try and create a turmoil in India, or at least in Jammu and Kashmir. What I, however, want to suggest also, Rajdeep, is that we don't need more boots on the ground. Today, we have electronic intelligence. You can have drones, you can have other forms of satellite imagery. Something like Bhaisar, and if there were six TRF or Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists, they could have been caught in any imaging, real-time imaging, given the fact that it's a tourist hub. All I'm suggesting is that we need not reduce or in any way compromise on our security vigil and our intelligence vigil. It doesn't mean that you need more forces on the ground. You have adequate forces on the ground. You need to use them better. You need to use technology. You need to use leverage technology in a way that you can capture real-time intelligence. And it is possible to do so given the tools that we have at our disposal.
Let's look at responses. As the US Vice President Vance, who's in Jaipur on a personal visit now, has condoled the Pahalgam attack deaths. It reminds me, remember when Bill Clinton was coming to India all those years ago, there was that terrible attack just on the eve of that visit in Chittis Singh Pura. Clearly, terrorists often use these occasions to get more mileage, a global mileage, and that could be, of course, one of the factors given the timing. But responses, how should one respond, Manoj Joshi? We've seen when, for example, attacks took place on a security camp in Uri, we had surgical strikes in response. Are those credible responses that will deter Pakistan? Do we need to find something which is far more durable and sends out a real deterrent effect?
Well, you know, this is the dilemma we've been facing in Kashmir. At one level, we have reduced the number, reduced the number of civilian casualties from about 1,000 in 2001 down to 31 last year. So there is a sense of complacency also coming, saying that we have, we are on top of the situation. So this breeds a sense of complacency, and so therefore areas like Pahalgam, which have not known a terrorist incident for a long time, tend to get ignored. See, now in terms of deterrence, it's true that we need to hit back every time this happens. But we did that in the case of Pulwama. We did that in the case of Uri. There, the fingerprints are much clearer, and the attacks were on the armed forces. Here, the attacks have been on civilians. The fingerprints are not that clear, though you and I know Pakistan is involved. But yes, hitting back,
Right.
And the deterrent capability to deter, you must hit back every time it happens.
I just want to stop you, Manoj, for a moment, because my correspondent Mir Farid is on the ground in Pahalgam. Mir Farid, tell us what you're seeing on the ground at the moment in Pahalgam. I'm presuming that the town is completely shocked by what has happened. We are told there was a candlelight march there a short while ago, angry anti-Pakistan slogans as well. Tell us what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, Rajdeep, right now there is an eerie silence. Pahalgam, let me tell you, till yesterday was the center of this particular tourism season, which was booming. There were so many tourists that you would hardly find a hotel room empty. Right now, it's absolutely deserted because of this terror attack. Obviously, you won't follow the tourists. Seeing the kind of carnage that has happened there, their families would have connected with them, and they have all moved out of Pahalgam. As far as candlelight marches are concerned, several locations in the Kashmir Valley have seen such candlelight marches. A form of protest that we've seen in the Kashmir Valley in the last 2-3 years, and those are obviously happening. But yes, silence right now. You'll only find security forces, top officers of the belt forces, civil administration. They're all camping here. Two parts to their operation. One, the anti-terror operation, which is ongoing. Obviously, it's pitch dark, so that will be impacted. But then the other part, to ensure timely help to the people who have been injured, to provide the medical assistance. Close to 30-40 ambulances were brought in from various hospitals, and it was a massive evacuation plan where injuries were being taken, dead bodies were being brought to one ground. So this is absolute carnage. In fact, the biggest such attack, if you talk of recent times, 2019 was more on the CRPF, a belt force on the forces, but this is civilian. This is civilians, tourists who had come there, who were enjoying in the place, and suddenly all hell broke loose.
Where are the
staccato
injured?
of machine gun fire from all sides.
Where are the injured been taken? Because we were told that an air ambulance was being brought in, and that itself took a couple of hours to get in. Where have the injured now all been taken?
Well, Rajdeep, depending on the nature of the injury, they have been shifted to various hospitals. Obviously, if you talk of Pahalgam, the hospital is fitted with basic facilities. It cannot tackle gunshot wounds. So you have injured who were more grievously wounded taken to Anantnag District Hospital. Then from there, some to Army's 92 base hospital, which specializes on battle wound injuries, and then also to Srinagar Hospital. So depending on the kind of injuries, they have been shifted to various hospitals. We've been told that around 20 people are still injured. Some of them could still be critical. While as far as the air ambulance is concerned, yes, all those measures were taken. But you have to understand that the time that it took to bring them down from Baisaran, which is a disconnected part of Pahalgam, blood loss, all those factors have weighed in as far as the final death toll is concerned. So it was complicated in many ways, but carnage and right now response being planned by the Home Minister in Srinagar and by the security forces as far as Pahalgam is concerned. Rajdeep?
Mir Farid joining us with that ground report. I just want to go back to you, General Hooda. We were just talking briefly about responses, looking at how India responded after Uri, after Pulwama. And as Manoj Joshi pointed out, we have to respond after every such situation. What's your belief? How should one respond? What is the ideal response to send Pakistan a firm message?
So, Rajdeep, if we are clear that the fingerprint of this operation is in Pakistan and that there needs to be a response, what are the options that India has There are no diplomatic engagements taking place between the two countries. There is no way we can apply economic pressure because there is no trade happening between the two countries. We have tried international pressure. That hasn't worked in the past. So, what is your sole option that is left? And your sole option that is left is use of military force. How it is to be applied, in what form, in what shape, is something that the government can decide. And I completely agree with what Mr. Joshi is saying. There has to be consistency in our strategy. We can't just say, okay, look, one thing has happened, and let's just react to that. There has to be a consistent long-term strategy. Unfortunately, Rajdeep, and I don't want to sound like a warmonger here, we are left with, if we want to respond, we are left with very little options. But the fact that we have superior military force, and in some ways that can be applied.
We don't want to get into, of course, details, but Amitabh Mattu, the question will arise, how does Pakistan get away with this? Because we've repeatedly claimed, the Modi government repeatedly claims terror is under control. They will point out figures, contrast that with the UPA years, all well and good. But yet you have these high-profile targeted attacks take place, whether it's on the CRPF in 2019 in Pulwama, whether it's on a security encampment in Uri earlier, or in Pathankot, and now you've got a situation where civilians have been targeted in such a large number. How does Pakistan get away if we believe terror is under control?
For two reasons. One, of course, Pakistan itself is acting irrationally because it's, as I said, it's acting against its own interests. It's created turmoil at home and it's splintering. But on the other hand, it uses China to bail it out. Again and again, the fact that some of these persons were not declared terrorists by the UNSC was because China vetoed them. I think it's important to also now lay down that Lakshman Rekha as far as China is concerned. That if it allows Pakistan to continue with what it's been doing and what it did today, then any attempt at normalization is a no territory. And simultaneously, I think we need to work with the Trump White House. In some ways, ironically, strangely, sadly, J.D. Vance was here when this incident happened. So I think we need to work with the American administration, with the White House, to try and because the Americans still have great leverages within Pakistan, within the ISI, within the Pakistani army. So we need to use that. But ultimately, we need to decide on a calibrated set of responses. The moment Pakistan does that, if it's an asymmetric attack, then you target some of their high-value targets within POK or elsewhere, and escalate it as they escalated. It's important to have that kind of an escalation ladder determined so that you can decide how you want to respond, rather than, as General Huda or Manoj said, that you wait and decide what your response is going to be. After all, the idea of deterrence in some ways is also that your adversary knows exactly what the cost will be. We have not ever communicated to Pakistan clearly what the cost will be if it conducts operations like this on Indian soil. Because our responses varied from diplomatic engagement to diplomatic downscaling to some degree of military use. But if there's a consistency, clarity, and a long-term strategy, there is no way that Pakistan, even at its most irrational, will persist what it's been doing.
Very important points made by Professor Mattu and our other guests. You need a clear escalatory ladder.